Hello, everyone, and welcome back to week 13 of the NFL. I hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving with your friends and family. I sure did, and was able to hit a parlay over Thanksgiving on Thanksgiving Day, actually. I had a three touchdown score, anytime touchdown score parlay. It was nice to hit, gave me a little bit of cash helping for the holidays. So I was very appreciative of that, especially since it's been a kind of a rough year, getting real close with sports bets. I was 3 yards away from Stephon Diggs from hitting another parlay and a Brandon Ayuk touchdown away from hitting another parlay. So I was very close, but just couldn't get the job done. But at least I hit something, and it helps for the holiday season. And hopefully I can help you guys out on Wednesdays, 9:30 or 10 p.m. Eastern time, somewhere around there. I go live on TikTok on my personal account, the Beast Benny Cakes, and I will answer your fantasy football and sports betting questions live. We've been doing really well over there. The one week we had about 25,000 in there. Last week we got about 2,000, so not as many, but still a really good time. So make sure you check it out Wednesdays, 9:30, 10 p.m. Eastern time. I do have a podcast account that's the Sports Lock Podcast. However, we don't have enough followers to go live over there. You need 1,000. I have that on the Beef Spinny Cakes account, but not on the Sports Lock Podcast, as is fairly new. So make sure you go follow both. By following both accounts, you'll know when I go live on Wednesdays at the exact time, so you can jump in. But anyways, we got to take a look back at week 12, of course, before we move on to week 13. And we were only 2 weeks away before the fantasy football playoffs start. So these next 2 weeks are critical in order for you to try to make a playoff spot or maintain a playoff spot. So these next few Wednesdays on TikTok will be a good way for us to interact or for me to help you try to get into the playoffs and win your league. But let's take a look at week 12 and see how we did. So our predictions were 10-6, not that great, but not that bad. The spread, we were 7-9, which was terrible. I don't know what happened there. There was a lot of different outcomes that I thought. Reverse that for the over under 9-7. And our locks, we were 3-1. The one we got wrong was the Colts. They lost to the Steelers. We had them locked in to win. So again, we haven't had a complete 4-0 locks this year. We're looking to do that this week, and we will see just in a few minutes here what my predictions are for that. Our week 12 daily fantasy started off with Jimmy Garoppolo. We didn't pay a lot for him, but he didn't have the best day. 222 passing yards and a touchdown. He has performed better for sure in the past. Our running backs, Ken Walker, didn't do a bad job, but only 26 yards. However, he was able to get 2 touchdowns, which helped him get that score. But unfortunately, Travis Etienne, he got injured early in the game, only 3 yards rushing. Otherwise, I was thinking he was due for a big day. Hasty, the backup running back, actually was a top 5 fantasy running back this week. So that could have been Travis Etienne if he didn't get hurt. And also, we took Latavius Murray. He had 92 yards on the ground, which isn't bad at all, but unfortunately, he couldn't find the end zone. For our wide receivers, we go with DeAndre Hopkins because he's been leading the way and doing a phenomenal job for us. 18.7, we'll take that. 4 receptions, 87 yards, and a touchdown. Brandon Ayuk was the next best wide receiver scorer for us. 5 catches for 65 yards. And then we had Christian Kirk, who had an off day for being a top 10 wide receiver, only 4 receptions for 46 yards. So not the best there. We go to tight end Austin Hooper. He got us 6. It's okay, but not great. And the Packers defense got us 0. So that's a total of 85.5. Just absolutely terrible. Probably our worst daily fantasy lineup of the year, even though it looked good to me last year. We've had some really good weeks. We've had some really bad weeks. So hopefully this week we can bounce back. Our week 12 start sit results. Told you to start Geno Smith. Not a bad start at all. He threw for 328 yards and passed for 2 touchdowns, 19.3 fantasy points. Daniel Jones ended up finishing quarterback 19, 228 yards and a touchdown. Told you to sit him. Probably the best to sit him. I'm sure there was other better options out there. Told you to start Latavius Murray, 10.8 fantasy points. I thought he'd go off a little bit more, at least have one touchdown, which would have definitely raised that up. But again, 92 yards is not bad on the ground. It was very wrong of me to say to sit Ramondre Stevenson. He ended up finishing 8th overall in fantasy out of the running backs this past week, 20.2 fantasy points, and that came from the passing game. He caught 9 passes for 76 yards. Damian Harris got injured during the game, so that helped his efficiency, which I wasn't expecting this past weekend. Told you to start Tyler Lockett, and he didn't have many receptions, but he did find the end zone, 38 yards and a touchdown. Probably the biggest win this past weekend was telling you to sit Tyler Boyd. He had a very off game, 82nd overall amongst wide receivers in week 12. He ended up finishing with just 3.6 fantasy points. And finally, Austin Hooper, told you to start. Pretty disappointing. He had been on a better roll, only 6 fantasy points. Foster Moreau had 12.3. Both had 3 receptions for 30 plus yards. However, Moreau was able to find the end zone over Austin Hooper. There is your week 12 recap, and we're going to move right along to the predictions for week 13, see if we can get some locks this coming week and go through each game. We're going to start with Thursday night, where we have the Bills visiting the Patriots right now. The Bills are 4.5-point favorites on the road in New England. And I'll take that. You know, the Bills have been playing some teams really close. But I think this is going to be a statement game for them, especially in the division, where that division is very tight. So it could go any way as of now, and Buffalo really needs this win. So I take them minus 4.5. I do think that they hit slightly the over of 43.5. New England has the best defense in the league, but Buffalo, you know, they can put up some points. So I think it'll be a very close game, but somehow Buffalo will pull out the 4.5. Now we're jumping to Sunday afternoon, the 1 o'clock slate games. We have Pittsburgh at Atlanta. The line keeps changing. When I made this podcast, we're at plus 1.5 for Pittsburgh. Now I'm seeing it's minus 1.5, so it keeps kind of flipping back and forth. I would take Pittsburgh either way, plus 1.5 or minus 1.5. Really like the game that they played on Monday night against the Colts. A pretty good Colts defense, and they were able to win there in Indianapolis after coming off a pretty disappointing loss the week before. So give me Pittsburgh on the road. They still have a chance to make the playoffs. It's slight, but they still do. I like the way that the teams have been improving over the past couple of weeks. So give me Pittsburgh plus 1.5 or minus 1.5. I would take them up to minus 2.5, really. I'm playing over 43 as well. Green Bay at Chicago. We don't know the status of Justin Fields right now. So I'm going to go with Green Bay minus 4. I think either way, Green Bay needs this win. They're not out of the playoff contention yet, but again, they are down the ladder. It's going to be tough for them to make it. But I like Green Bay minus 4. They played a pretty good game against the Eagles. I'm going to play under 43.5. I don't think that many points will be put on the board. Our first lock of the week is going to be Detroit plus 1 at home against Jacksonville. Jacksonville had a phenomenal game last week against the Ravens at home, getting the victory. Detroit coming off a disappointing loss to the Bills at home. So they get some rest, they get some time off, and I think that Detroit comes back with the win. They've been competing in some close games with some very good teams, and I think this is going to be a key victory for them. Again, Jacksonville had the game pretty much they came back, so they it took a lot of effort in that one. So that's why I like Detroit at home to outright win plus 1 there. And I'm playing over 51.5 points. Both teams have a sluggish defense, which means there's going to be some points put up on the board. My second lock comes next, and that is the New York Jets at the Minnesota Vikings. Give me Minnesota minus 3 at home versus the Jets. You know, the Jets looked good with White at quarterback last week, but overall they're playing a very good Minnesota team in Minnesota. I think that White will make a couple bad passes this week, causing them to lose the game. Also, Michael Carter got injured. We don't know the status of that. James Robinson is there, so it's not too terrible there. However, I think Minnesota comes back this week in a good way after a nice victory against the Patriots and takes down the Jets at home. I'm playing under 45.5 as well. Next, we have Washington at the New York Giants. I'm taking Washington minus 2.5. They've been playing really good football. The Giants have been kind of sluggish lately. So give me Washington to win minus 2.5 and under 40.5. It's a divisional game, so I think it's going to be lower scoring. Tennessee is at Philadelphia. I like Tennessee to cover +5. I think that's a tough amount. Philadelphia is, again, been playing some teams really close and some bad teams really close, including the Packers last week and the Colts the week before, where they snuck out a victory. So I like Tennessee, who's a top AFC team this year, to cover that +5. I could also see him winning, but I will take Philadelphia by a field goal to win this coming week. Over under 44.5 points. I'm going under there. Denver +8 at Baltimore. The Ravens, they're going to come out trying to swing against this very bad Denver team, especially after that disappointing loss against Jacksonville. So I like them -8. Again, Denver just very bad, but Denver does have a really good defense. I just don't think that they're going to put many points up on the board. That's where Baltimore will be able to put some points on the board. I see like a 24-10 type game, and it hitting the under this week. Now we jump to the last 1 o'clock game. That is Cleveland -7 at Houston. We get Deshaun Watson back. He's going to be starting against his former team. I think that he comes out, swinging, especially again against that former team. I like Cleveland -7 against that Houston team that's the worst in the league. I'm playing under 47. Next, we jump to the 4 o'clock games, and we're going to start with Seattle at the Los Angeles Rams. I think the Rams could cover that 7, but they're very banged up. No more Allen Robinson now for the rest of the year. Seattle losing a disappointing one to the Raiders at home. I think they come back in a big way and at least win by a touchdown there on the road. I'm playing over 41.5 in that one as well. Miami at San Francisco is the game of the week for sure. Two phenomenal teams. Miami going into San Fran as +4 underdogs. I do think that they cover that. I think it's a very close competitive game. I think it can be higher scoring. Give me San Francisco to win, though, at home, over 46.5 points. Next, we have our third lock, which is Kansas City -2.5 at Cincinnati. I really like the way that Kansas City's playing. They could potentially go back to the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes, MVP candidate right now. Cincinnati winning a great game in Tennessee. But again, I think this is going to be one of those games that Kansas City is going to show up to and at least win by a field goal in a high scoring game. So give me over 52.5, but Kansas City coming away with the win and locking in -2.5. Our last lock of the week is going to be the Chargers at the Raiders. Raiders' offense has been coming alive, which I really like, and so is the Chargers. Justin Herbert's been getting healthy. Keenan Allen is back. So right now I'm going over 50.5. I think 50, I was surprised to see that, but I love that bet. We saw what the Raiders did last week against Seattle. Both teams really don't have a good defense, so that is where these high scoring is going to come from. So lock in over 50.5 between the Chargers and the Raiders. I will take the Chargers to win and -2 on the road. Indianapolis is +11 at Dallas in the Sunday night football game. Indianapolis has just been looking terrible. Bad clock management at the end of that game against the Steelers on Monday night. Dallas is definitely a Super Bowl contender team. They've been playing phenomenal. That defense is one of the best in the leagues. And Dak Prescott coming back has looked really solid. Plus, you have two amazing running backs in Pollard and Zeke, and a great wide receiver in CeeDee Lamb. Dalton Schultz was the #1 tight end last week. So I could talk about them all day, but I think they easily cover that 11. Give me Dallas -11 to win at home and over 43.5 points, mainly because I think that Dallas will be able to put up at least 28 points on the Indianapolis Colts defense. If the Steelers put up 24, Dallas could easily put up 28. And lastly, Monday Night Football in Tampa Bay right now. The Saints are +3.5 in Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay losing to Cleveland. I called that last week. They need a win at home. This is a very close division, all teams under 500. So I do think the Saints come out to play. They cover the 3.5 slightly, and Tampa Bay wins by a field goal. So Tampa Bay to win, Saints to cover, over 40 points. Those are the predictions for week 13. Let's see if we can get those locks as well for the week. Again, we're taking Detroit +1, Minnesota -3, Kansas City -2.5, and over in the Chargers Raiders game, over 50.5. Now we jump to daily fantasy. Now, last week I said that I really liked the lineup. This week, I think it's a pretty good lineup as well, and I think it can get the job done for you. We're going to start out with Trevor Lawrence. He's going up against one of the worst defenses in the league, in the Detroit Lions. And last week, a huge week against a really good Ravens defense, put up 321 yards and 3 touchdowns. I think that he can put up, at least 250 plus passing yards, 2 to 3 touchdowns this week, and we get him for under 6,000, which is a steal. Again, especially since that matchup is phenomenal. We're going to go with 2 running backs this week, and we're going to pay up for Austin Eckler, 8,500 for him, but he's well worth it. He's going to get us at least 20 plus fantasy points. He is just pretty much the main guy on this Chargers team. He can run the ball. He can, catch the ball in the backfield, which is his specialty. So in PPR, he is the best. So give me him for 8,500 since we can fit him in. And we're going to get a good deal on Brian Robinson Jr. That's why we can pay up for Austin Eckler. The running back from the Commanders has looked really good. He is running back 6 last week in fantasy, 105 yards and a touchdown. And I think he can continue that this week against the Giants. So 2 running backs means we're going 4 wide receivers, and we're going to start with the guy I absolutely loved from the beginning of the season. One of my big sleepers was Amon-Ra St. Brown, a target hog. Finished wide receiver 3 last week, 9 receptions, 122 yards, and a touchdown. I will take that any day. Give me also Amari Cooper of the Cleveland Browns. I think with Watson coming back, Watson, he likes to throw to one guy. That was Brandon Cooks in Houston, and I think that one guy is going to be Amari Cooper in Cleveland. So I expect a big week for him and a bounce back week. We're also going to get Christian Kirk again. Again, not a great week for a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy for the year, only 4 receptions. But I think that, of course, goes up this week, especially Trevor Lawrence having a big day. I think Christian Kirk will be the guy to have those receptions. Wide receiver Christian Watson is who we're taking, only 5,200, but Watson has been the wide receiver 3 in fantasy over the last 4 weeks. Last week, 4 receptions, 110 yards, and a touchdown. The guy has been stepping up as a wide receiver 1 for Green Bay, and I think that continues this week against Chicago. For that price, you can't beat it. Tight end, we're going Noah Fant, paying only 3,000 for him. He's been getting some looks, some receptions in Seattle. Again, he's not a guy that's really going to go off, but if he can get you close to 10 points, it's a win. And we're going to go with the worst defense this week, and the Titans at 2,200, playing in Philadelphia, but I don't think that they're going to give up as many as people think to be the worst defense this week. The Titans aren't terrible defensively, so for only 2,200, I'll take that risk, especially since we get to pay up in other areas to help us try to win this week. And lastly, we got to take a look at the week 13 start sit. And we're going to start all the guys that I pretty much talked about here for my daily fantasy. We're going Trevor Lawrence, start him, start Brian Robinson Jr., start wide receiver Amari Cooper, and start Noah Fant. Now, this hits this week. We're going Matt Ryan. I don't like the matchup at all for him against Dallas. He's been playing pretty bad as well, so make sure you sit him. Also sit Dameon Pierce, which might be a surprise for some since he is pretty much a Rookie of the Year candidate, but he only has 16 rushing yards in the last 2 games combined. He has not been utilized much, and I think it's going to be the same thing. I think he can improve, but is it going to be enough to say, hey, start him? I know this is a tough sit, especially since he's a guy that you've been using this year in fantasy. But I think this week you got to sit him at home versus Cleveland. I think Cleveland will be putting up too many points that Houston won't be running the ball as much. And we know that Dameon Pierce isn't catching any passes out of the backfield. Another surprise to some might be Jalen Waddle, but I'm sitting him this week for the Miami Dolphins. I don't like the matchup against the 49ers on the road. So I think he is a sit this week, even though, again, he's in your lineup. You're probably going to start him, but I don't think he's going to produce like he has. Lastly, sit Tyler Conklin of the New York Jets. Again, I don't think he's going to perform or that team's going to perform as well versus the Vikings. Have to travel to Minnesota this weekend. So I'd be sitting Tyler Conklin. Guys, I want to thank you for watching this week's podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, Sports Lock Podcast, and like the video, share it with your friends. Much appreciated. We are on Instagram, TikTok. So check us out, Sports Lock Podcast. I go live every Wednesday night, 9:30 or 10 p.m. Eastern Time, somewhere around there, answering your fantasy football questions as well as your sports betting questions for the week. Now, that live will be on my personal account, the Beast Benny Cakes, all one word. You can follow me over there. Then you'll be notified when I go live every Wednesday night. So thank you for listening in once again. I wish you the best of luck this week, and what might be a must win for you in fantasy. Hopefully you can get the job done, and hopefully we can, make some bank here on some sports bets this week. I do make some fun TikTok videos over on the Sports Lock Podcast TikTok page of the bets that I play. Again, made the video of the bet I actually won with Amon-Ra St. Brown last week being an anytime touchdown scorer. We also had Dalton Schultz to score a touchdown. And then in the nightcap, we went with Justin Jefferson to get the 3-person anytime touchdown scorer to hit for a nice little payday. So thank you once again, and I will see you guys next week for the Week 14 podcast. Or hopefully I'll see you on Wednesday night on TikTok Live. Have a good one.